On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, since it is Labor Day, who are the Avalanche that need to put in some work this year? Let's talk about that. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. And make sure you subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, we get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. We did get a lot of mailbag questions. I don't know how many we'll get to today, but whatever we don't get to, we'll space that out between Wednesday and Friday. Still doing 3 shows a week until like the middle of September. I think we're going back to like right around when preseason starts. We'll go back to every day. So stay tuned for that. Where we wanted to start today, Kyle, obviously is with the Johnny Gaudreau passing. And I know everybody knows about it by now. But we just felt like it's such a big deal that we could, even though it happened, 3 days ago now, like it's still something that just needs to get discussed because it's just, it's still tough to wrap your head around. And I remember when I saw the first post, I'm not kidding you. Like my first reaction was, oh, there's somebody in some obscure league overseas, Johnny Gaudreau, and it did, because my feed is just nothing but hockey. Thank God for that, with all the other nonsense going on in the world. But hockey is just a close-knit community. And when that happens, when somebody, remember the guy who got the skate came up and he hit him, and I don't remember what that league was in. Like it was a big deal just in the hockey community. Whenever something like this happens, no matter what level it's at, it becomes a big deal. So when I saw his name and 2 Gaudreaus, like Matthew Gaudreau, I'm like, okay, and then I saw the post was actually from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I'm like, what is going on here? And this was before all the information came out. And, they did say it was like a tragic accident. And obviously we know what it is now. But it was just not computing for me for a little while when I first heard about it. And maybe in some sense, it's still not. It's just really odd to know that this happened.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal for me. Like I saw this was slowly breaking Thursday night before I went to bed. Like the rumors were out there, something happened, and nothing was getting confirmed. And it was one of those like, whatever. It's Twitter. I'm going to go to bed. Right. I woke up Friday, and then the concrete stuff coming out. And then the statement from Gary Bettman is what hit me the most. And like, it's no mystery. Like Johnny Hockey was one of those players I wanted to see in an Avalanche sweater. Really, really bad. He was one of my favorite players, both on and off the ice. For a lot of the things he does off the ice, I respect him for. And for him to be gone along with his brother in the nature it happened and why they were there in the first place, it just, the more it keeps going, the worse it gets. And it really affected me all weekend. Like this is something I've had to deal with in my past as well with people I know. And for this situation to come back around to a hockey player I respected, I mean, it's just really, really rough to get over. And I love seeing all the support from all the fan bases and teams, not just in hockey. It's NHL, MLB, NFL. Like it's good to see them remembered in the way they are.
We did an episode a couple weeks now on, it was kind of like a fun segment on players that we dislike, that we still dislike them if they came to the Avalanche. And Gaudreau is one of those guys that was nowhere near that conversation. And he was one of those guys that, there are guys in this league that are just flat out good guys.
Yeah.
And most of the guys that win the Lady Bing, you like those guys because they win that award because it's a sportsmanship award. They're not headhunters or stuff like that. So when you watch them play, you just have a good vibe about when you're watching them play because they're going about it like the right way and they're not playing the game trying to win one over on anybody or anything like that. And he's a Lady Bing winner. And outside of that, everything, like he just seems like a good-hearted, good-natured guy. And like you said, when the information started coming out, every layer to it was just like another gut punch about how they were just riding their bikes, and then how it happened with a drunken driver, and then they were in town for their sister's wedding, which was the next day, and then I don't know much about Matthew Gaudreau, but now I think it's his wife. I think they're married.
Yeah.
They're expecting a kid, and then even the guy who hit them is a former military, and he works in the addiction field. It just everything on top, one thing on top of the other. On top of it, it's just like this is maybe the worst story of the year.
Yeah,
the worst story of the year. And the good thing about Matthew is the GoFundMe that is up. Last time I checked, that's near like $500,000 right now. So, which is awesome to see. So it brings people together. You don't want it to in this type of fashion. It's just it's still difficult to see. And now the Avalanche, that first home game for them takes on a whole new meaning because that's their opener at home. And that's only the second game of the year for Columbus. So there's going to be some emotion going on in that game.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot to the quality of the Gaudreau brothers, like for this to happen and the collective, like a lot of you talked about that GoFundMe page. That's a lot of NHL players adding to that. They're the community, the hockey community, the hockey players rallying around these two guys. Like when Johnny went to Columbus, we see guys going to different teams all the time, and you're like, whatever, he's going for this, he's going for that. Just the collective conversation around Johnny going to Columbus was, such a good career that's going to get just forgotten about in Columbus because he could do so much better, and he's such a good guy, and he was well loved there. And honestly, with such a terrible situation, the thing that we all could take out of it is appreciate the lives of the Gaudreau brothers and what they meant to hockey, and look around you. Like all those people in your life, give them an extra hug because you never know. Don't take them for granted because life is short, and these little instances remind you of that.
And the reason why he went to Columbus, he's a homeboy, and Columbus is not a hometown. Like he's from Jersey, and he tried to go there. Like it was nothing against Calgary. Calgary had a really good team. He just wanted to be closer to home. And if my memory serves me correctly, like he wanted to go to the Devils. They just couldn't make it work. They tried, but they couldn't make it work contract wise, salary cap wise. So he went to Columbus, not really the destination for free agents, especially, all-star free agents. But he's like, no, this is what's important to me is being as close as I can to my family. That's why he went there. You got to respect things like that. You don't see that a lot from players. So, just everything about it is just horrible. Just horrible.
Yeah,
so
if you don't think I had a Johnny Hockey Devils jersey waiting
ready
in my
to go,
cart,
you would have.
Oh,
yeah,
you're out of your mind.
Yeah, we would have. And I don't want to go here, excuse me, but I am because it just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't have a lot of love for ESPN lately. A clip was going on of Mike Greenberg addressing it, talking about it. That clip happened 15 minutes into their show of Get Up after 15 minutes of Colorado Buffalo highlights, where they had 5 people breaking that down. And then they talked about, after that was all done, we beat that horse. Then he brings it up and they go right into commercial. They should say like, Johnny Gaudreau dies at 31, and then they fade to black, go to commercial. No mention of it ever again on that episode. First Take didn't mention it at all. I know ESPN does nothing for hockey, but usually when it's stories like this, these like sentimental stories, they're all over it. But they couldn't even muster up the energy to talk about an all-star nonetheless. It could, and it didn't matter like who it would have been if they died in this way. Like, and he's an athlete in a professional sports, so you would figure they would talk about it a little bit. But they didn't touch it pretty much all weekend, and that just I was, the emotions were all over the place anyway. That was just enhancing them because it just drills home that they just don't care if this was a football player, if this was a basketball player, wall to wall coverage, rightfully so. But Johnny Gaudreau just isn't important for them, which kind of annoys me.
Yeah, but I was glad to see like the Guardians take time out of their game to observe
tons
that.
of teams. The Yankees,
and Ohio
put
State,
something on.
yeah.
So you got it. You got a lot of people reaching out, but the so-called worldwide leader just didn't have time. So I don't know why we have time for them anymore, but we kind of don't have a choice because they have a contract and they're showing the games. But that's where we're at. But yeah, all in all, just a difficult weekend, and this is it's kind of gonna be the story for the season, I think, and it's gonna follow it around, and we'll see what they do in terms of what the Columbus Blue Jackets do for him, what other teams around the league do, because you're gonna see it a lot, and that's where my focus will be once I got past the ESPN crap, and that will be okay. Now people are taking this and doing the right thing with it, so that's where we're at.
Yeah, I feel bad for Columbus fans. It's a lot of tragedy.
Oh man,
in the last 5 years of Columbus,
it is.
It's
It's tough. So, all right, we will move on from there, and always have the Gaudreau family in our thoughts because it's a tragedy. So, all right, let's get our first break in, and when we come back, since it is Labor Day, we'll talk about who's got some work to do on the Avalanche roster. Let's talk about that next. All right, let's talk about FanDuel first. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. We have something a little different for everyone. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and they get a 3-week trial for free of the NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. And all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. One thing Kyle and I are going to do this year, and this is going to be our only FanDuel ad read of the week, so we have to do it today. I wanted to wait a little bit until the week went on, but it's not going to make a difference. I'm going to lose anyway. So we're each going to pick one game, and then we'll both pick the Broncos game with the spread. So what do you got, sir? What's your locked-in pick for this week?
My locked-in pick would be the kickoff game for the NFL season. That would be the Eagles over the Packers.
Eagles are giving the Packers 2.5 points. So I think that should be a relatively very good game. I mean, that's two favorites going at it, I believe, right?
Yeah, I don't think Jordan Love's got it. So
no. Packer fans are so lucky. Good Lord. I went with the highest point spread of the week, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals giving the New England Patriots 9.5 points for no other reason than I just love the fact that New England is 9.5 point dogs. Love it. Been waiting decades for this moment, and here it is. And I hope the Bengals beat them by 29.5. So that's my pick. And as far as the Broncos, they are getting 5.5 from Seattle. What do you like there, sir?
Oh, I'm definitely picking Denver because it is time to believe.
I have to. They always say when betting, go with your head, not your heart. So I have to go Seattle here. I think that's a very tough, a rookie QB in Seattle week 1. I got all the faith in Bo Nix, but that is a challenge on week 1. Good luck, kid. I hope you can pull it off, obviously, but that's tough. So I think I got to go Seahawks, given 5.5. We shall see. Well, you don't like it. You don't like it. I know.
Nope.
But we will check in with that next week on how we did. But until then, visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so it is Labor Day, and other than a lot of people like myself and Mr. Sullivan here having the day off, it's a working holiday where we celebrate work. So, which of the Colorado Avalanche do you feel has some work to do this year, sir? I have a pretty decent list here. So I see if yours matches up with mine. I have no idea who you're going to pick here, by the way.
Oh, my number one, because
Yeah.
today Day is Labor Day.
Okay.
Number one, easily, Alexander Georgiev.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
just production wise,
Yep.
but he has to gain the trust of Avalanche fans, because we spent episode after episode talking about forwards and defense. Nobody knows what you're going to get out of Georgiev and the goalie position this year. And honestly, whatever your opinion is on what you're going to get, you're probably right, because we've seen both ends of what he can provide, just atrocious and then really, really good. So I would like to see that level out, and I would like to see him get maybe 50 games this year. I'm tired of the 60 plus. I like to see that level out a little bit. So maximize when you're out there to work. I'd like to see him, one, gain the trust, and two, find some stability.
Not a bad one at all. Yeah, I think that is going to be an ongoing thing all season long, and finding some consistency for him. So it's yeah, it's kind of an easy one.
Yeah.
For me. One of my first ones, I didn't really list these in any order. I have Casey Middlestat.
Mhm.
I really liked what he did last year, but now it's like, hey man, like you got a little sample size, and you got the off season, whatever you get in the preseason, but we need you to really dig in and be that guy. We have to end this 2C conversation. We feel like we have, but that's just in what's on paper. We like all that, and what we saw from you, we saw glimpses of it. Man, if we could get that for a full season, that puts to bed that conversation for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I think he's up for the task, but as far as a guy that has work to do, it is definitely him. And he's got to show that he can be part of a Stanley Cup team, or a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations, and be productive on there, because he hasn't really done that in his career. Not to his fault. But when you're playing for Buffalo, they haven't been relevant in a long time. Now you're on a team that is relevant. What are you going to do with that? So he'd be one of my top guys, I'd say.
Yeah, and that kind of follows into my second pick. We kind of forget after the season's over and all the stats reset to 0, and we look back fondly at the overall picture of what this player was. Josh Manson.
Really?
Yeah, he had peaks and he had valleys.
I thought he had a great year. I thought he had a really good year.
He had a good year, but it started tapering off. Started out really good, disappeared, got back to really good, disappeared. I would like to see everything I ask out of Georgiev. I'd like to see Manson just maintain the peaks and valleys. Like, if we're going to say that you're probably number 3 on that top 4 in defense, you've got to start playing like it. And we need a more consistent game. And I would like to see him put in the work to maintain that level instead of dropping off a cliff and being invisible for a while and taking the dumb penalties. I'd like to see him keep that level and stay in that top 4, because this is a competitive defensive core. And I'd like to see him really stay around if he is a member of the Avalanche.
You don't think he's going to be a member of the Avalanche? Well,
they still have moves to make.
I mean, So, I mean, where I was going to say, the reason why I can't see him going anywhere, and maybe one of the reasons why, what work he's got to do, is he's the muscle. It is him and nobody else. And so that's where his work is going to come in. So that's where I was fine with his production, how he played. I thought he had a really good season. Now it's kind of maybe amped up a little bit, because if there's any scores to settle, it's on you and you alone. and that's really where the work is going to come in for Josh Manson. I think he's up for that, but he doesn't want to go out there and be known as that guy. Like he wants to play defense. He wants to chip in offensively when he can. He doesn't want to be the Curtis McDermott just skating around looking for headhunts. No, it's not what he wants to do. But interesting pick. I'm gonna go with one of the newer guys, youngest guys. That's Callum Ritchie. And we kind of talked about it recently on with the prospect pool that the Avalanche have. It's good, but the guys at the top, like Richie's your number one guy, and I want to see one of an Avalanche rookie come in and just step right in and go for it, and not have these going down, playing the 9 games, and we're going to send them down, and you know what I mean, like. I would love to be done with that. I would love to have a rookie come in, seize the opportunity, take the reins, and he's an Avalanche for the next 15 years. Would absolutely love to see that from Callum Ritchie. I think he wants that. Like you see clips of him on the practice ice. He looks good. He looks like he can really kind of take this role, even though it's gonna be a minor role this year. But we've seen Jared Bednar do this thing up and down the lineup. You get injuries all the time. Maybe he gives him an opportunity to play up on a top 6 role or something like that for a game or two. And I want to see someone like him grab those opportunities and run with it. Would love to see that from Callum Ritchie.
And it's beautiful. Like we didn't plan this list at all, but that leads into my honorable mention and why I even put this player here. Everything you said about Callum Ritchie, my honorable mention, who needs to put in the work, Jean-Luc Foudy. Everything,
dude. I got him on here too.
Everything you said about Callum Ritchie, Foudy, that was supposed to be you.
I know. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's supposed because he's a third rounder. So maybe the expectation from a first round or third, but I get what you're saying. Like,
that was your moment. Everything was lining up to that, and for some reason, it stopped. And Callum Ritchie has passed you when it comes to this. And it's time to reclaim that because, hey, centers are valuable when it comes to the Avalanche. And boy, this would have been prime for you to really make an impact. So this is your time to shine.
I do have one more guy on here, and I want to preface this by saying just because we're talking about guys who have work to do does not mean like they are not putting in work. And I don't want to look at it as a bad thing, as a negative thing. And when I tell you who this is, you're gonna be like, well, yeah, obviously. Nathan MacKinnon.
No, you're right.
Nathan MacKinnon, like we know he's all world, right? But this is going to be an interesting season to watch because, like I said in an earlier episode, now he's individually has a target on his back for winning the Hart and the Ted Lindsay. Now you have guys are coming in to me like, I want to match up with him and I want to shut him down. So that's from a player to player perspective. From a team perspective, he's got to get these guys back into a Stanley Cup final. You know what I mean? And that's where his work comes in is, he works harder than anybody else, but coming through in the clutch when you need to, winning those games, you need to advance into the playoffs. That's where his work comes into play. And I think if you ask him, I'm sure he would tell you the same thing.
I mean, when you're talking about work, Nathan MacKinnon, he got the promotion, he got the raise. It's time to start playing that way.
Well, he is. He's playing that way. I know.
With the whole league is looking at you because, the Avs won the Cup in 2022, and then it's been a lot of what have you done for me lately? Like we know what you can do, but you have nothing to show for it. Now that Nathan MacKinnon's got everything he's sought out to get, now what?
Now it's like, yeah. So, if anybody's up for that task, it's Nathan MacKinnon. So
we'll
see where that goes. All right, one more break in, and then we'll get to one question today. And I love that we got this question. So let's get a break in here and we'll answer on the other end. All right. So we'll get to a lot of questions like during the week. But I wanted to bring this one up because sometimes I lose track of it. Like day in and day out. I'm sure it's the same for you too. It's just like hockey is like just surrounding me literally in this room. But like I said earlier, my like news feeds, my news readers and everything are all just hot. Like the algorithm knows like I like hockey. So it gives me like 99% hockey stuff. And sometimes I lose track and lose sight of there's some people who are just getting into the sport. There's some people who are just listening to this podcast for the first time. And we got a question from electrician Ziggy, who's one of our subtexters, and he's thrown in questions before. And he said, for a hockey newbie like me, he said y'all, so he must be from your neck of the
Sounds
woods.
like my people.
I mean, he wrote y'all. So y'all have mentioned bridge deals / contracts in the past when discussing signing players, and I'm still a little fuzzy on them. Can y'all explain? Forgive me, I've only been a fan of hockey for just over 2 seasons now, and I'm unsure of how that works. He has to follow up to that, but I want to get into that, the bridge deals first. And so thank you for like bringing us back down to earth and saying like, there's people who are fresh to this sport that maybe don't get the terminology and all that stuff. So basically what a bridge deal is, when a guy is drafted, he comes into the league, he's drafted or after college and signs, whatever, comes into the league, his first contract is a 3-year deal. And that's an ELC, and you'll hear 3-letter acronyms all over the place. It's an entry-level contract. When that is up, that's when you're a restricted free agent. When that is up, you can sign a contract, a long-term contract or a short-term. The bridge deal is if you sign a guy for a short amount of time before his 27th birthday, because when he hits age 27 and over, he automatically becomes an unrestricted free agent. So you're kind of double dipping when you do things like that. When, like, if a guy is 23 years old and you sign him to a 3-year contract, so that way you can sign him twice, because when they're restricted, that's restricted. They're restricted to you. Now you can get into contracts where there's what were those contracts that the Blues just gave the guys from Edmonton? I'm blanking on it right now. Whatever it's called. But you can pull guys away that are on restricted contracts.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the time it doesn't happen, but it can happen, like the Blues just did. So you're kind of double dipping. So you're signing him right up until that 27-year age, and then you sign him again. So it goes beyond the age of 27, and then he becomes an unrestricted way past the age of 27.
Oh, and you just froze up there, and the risk of doing these bridge deals, you're taking them for less, and yeah, you can get to sign them again, but it's kind of like the Drouin thing. They could play to really price themselves out. So yes, you do get the opportunity to play with the money a little bit and really get to see how this deal works out for you. But you could also be, you said double dipping and doubling down, but you could also be paying a lot when it comes to that second contract. And that's the risk that you run.
Exactly. We had this conversation with Kel McCarr, who they did not bridge. And we had this conversation with, who else? It was, they just got rid of him. I'm blanking on his name too. I'm all fuzzy on today's for the Middlestat deal. They sent him to
Bo Byram.
Byram. I'm thinking I got Bo Nix on the mind, so it was
a good problem to have.
Yeah, I know. So, but they did with Byram.
Yeah.
And that would, so the idea was, see what happens after that. So that's where bridge deals come into play. There are there's a lot of other things that are included in this. And, if you've played so many games, I think if you played 7 seasons before you turn 27, you're a UFA, you're an unrestricted free agent. So guys like Bedard will be unrestricted before his 27th birthday, because he'll be in the league for 7 years. So there's a lot more to it, but that, for the most part, is how that works. The other question he asked, y'all say when a team has home ice advantage, there is a favorable matchup. Other than the home crowd, how does that work? Do they announce the lines after the visiting team announces theirs, so we know who we want to put out on each line? Yes, like that's basically what it is all throughout the game. You always hear the term last change. The home team has last change. So what that means is if there's a stoppage in play, if there's not icing, because you can't change on an icing. If the puck just, if the goalie stop or the puck flies out of the ice into the crowd, whatever, if there's a stoppage in play and there's line changes, the visiting team has to change first. and the home coach can see that. And if he wants to do a matchup thing, that's the last change. So if the visiting team throws out like their fourth line and the home team is down and it's in their zone and they're like, this is our opportunity, they'll put out their top line to face the fourth line. So that's kind of on top of your regular home ice advantages. Home crowd, ice conditions are different no matter where you are in arenas, and especially in Denver with the altitude. Obviously, that's a home ice advantage too, which people love to talk about.
Yeah, and you have that advantage of that emotion as well, playing into the decisions of the referees. Like, and you know your way around the arena. And if we were still playing in Arizona, you could be changing your jersey in a bathroom. You never know.
You never know. So that's pretty much what those two things mean. So thank you, Electrician Ziggy, for asking those questions, which we kind of lose sight of, that we just gloss over at this stage and just say, oh, ELC, UFA, RFA. And there's some people that need to really know what they are. So thank you.
Well, Electrician Ziggy, like we both have been, me and Chris, we've been hockey fans since like the 90s, and like we have books and all this, but I'll tell you right now, don't worry, we're still figuring it out because the NHL doesn't even know the rules.
Yeah, I know. I'm always learning in this sport. Like it's a never ending saga of learning everything about it. So don't hesitate to ask questions like that, and if I don't know, I'll go find out because I want to know too. So that's where we're at. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It's going to wrap this one up. So we'll be back on Wednesday with more questions and anything else that's going on in the world of the Colorado Avalanche. So thank you for making this your first listen of the day. We'll be back on Wednesday. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.